everybody expecting this heat wave to come still? Lots of people actually carrying umbrellas and stuff now too, just because of the sun and all that. I don't know what's going on today. Lots of crazy stuff actually in terms of, I guess, variety of stuff. I guess the first one was kind of interesting. People often say they see this drone and so forth, whereas the question is, was it really a drone? And how about this one? Would you actually believe it? It says, mysterious drone that led 2 helicopters on a 100-mile-per-hour chase for an hour has vanished without a trace. A mysterious drone that led authorities on a high-speed chase through the skies of Arizona is now under investigation by the FBI. The incident saw a Customs and Border Protection helicopter alert the Tuscan Police Department that a drone was flying too close to their vehicle after it orbited the chopper several times. This then escalated into an hour-long chase between the drone and 2 helicopters, with the drone reportedly reaching speeds up to 100 miles per hour. The drone at one point was said to have entered a restricted military airspace at the David Monton Air Force Base. It soon vanished northwest out of the city and into the night, and the authorities have been unable to locate who was operating the drone, although officials now believe it was launched 5 miles south of Tuscan. Now they're saying the drone was moving, I guess, so fast that it kept evading them. They couldn't track it. They were even using things like night vision goggles and they were unable to see it. And as well, in some news reports, they're saying this drone was flying 14,000 feet in the air. So 1 hour long, going 100 miles per hour at 14,000 feet. What are the odds that this is actually like a drone? I mean, if anything, you're gonna have to call this a UFO, isn't it? Just too much hysteria and media news wanting it to be, I guess, drones for some odd reason, I guess. Although, in terms of media and stuff like that, apparently it says here, liberals passed Bill C-10 to regulate social media and streaming. The legislation needs to win passage through the Senate, a process that could be preempted by an election later this year that would effectively kill the bill. So this is that controversial bill where, I guess, on one side they're saying they want to make all, I guess, digital platforms and media kind of like traditional broadcasters to abide by the same rules, so to speak. And this is supposed to help them push, I guess, more Canadian content. But the fear is with the way it was written and taking out clauses where theoretically anybody who publishes something on a social media platform, for example, could be treated as a quote broadcaster, if that's the way to say it. So people are afraid this is basically restricting things like speech and all that. Because like here it says, senators push back on Bill C-10 after MPs approve controversial internet regulation bill. Members of Parliament have passed Bill C-10, an update of Canada's decades-old broadcasting regime. But senators say the legislation needs more study and are declining to pass it quickly into law before Parliament's summer recess. And as mentioned here, it says the bill has sparked controversy with freedom of expression advocates concerned it would also cover citizens' social media posts. The government says provisions in the legislation would ensure that doesn't happen. Although it makes you wonder, if you give them that type of, I guess, ability to do so, can it be abused, so to speak? Because in a semi-related thought to that, where I guess for anyone who just says it's 100% okay, doesn't need debate or anything like that, essentially in China, as everyone knows, it's a communist country. The media is heavily controlled. But in Hong Kong, people have had more freedom, I guess you can say, until it was handed back over. And slowly, Hong Kong people have been losing their rights and all that. And there was this big news source that was called Apple Daily, who I guess opposed a lot of the communist stuff. And I guess it was just a matter of time where they abused that, I guess, security law, because it says they're shutting down now. It says, goodbye Apple Daily, tears in Hong Kong paper's final hours. Hours after Hong Kong's pro-democracy tabloid Apple Daily announced its imminent closure, hundreds of supporters gathered at the paper's headquarters for a final goodbye. They brought gifts, tied ribbons to the fence, and chanted encouraging slogans in the rain. Some were seen crying. The publication decided to shut down after its reports were accused of breaching a national security law, leading to a freeze on the company's assets. So imagine that. Again, that national security law was supposed to be something where they say anyways, oh, it's to stop people from being, I don't know, like terrorists or whatever, spreading misinformation and all that. But it seems like they're abusing it to basically silence people they don't agree with, like with their views and all that. Now, I don't know if necessarily this C-10 thing would be like similar to this, but that would be the concern. How do you stop something like this from happening, where if they're going to control everything in terms of the speech and all that, someone could just come by and say in the future, just because they have so much power, I don't like what this person's saying or whatever, silence them. They're a quote broadcaster. because they even said like in a lot of the interviews, like, well, what's the milestone, so to speak, where you consider people as quote broadcasters? So basically, if someone becomes like big enough or something like that, then all of a sudden, then you can all of a sudden restrict like their speeches and all that. That's kind of worrisome. It's like all those incident with the drone stuff here. I know initially they pushed to a lot of misinformed people, oh, it's all about safety and so forth, but so far from what I've seen, the only restrictions came down like for things like NOTAMs is blocking things like media from actually documenting and reporting stuff. And then this story has been going around everywhere. It kind of actually relates to that topic of, I guess, people in a position of power potentially abusing it. It's kind of fascinating. This one here says, Britney Spears' full statement against her conservatorship. So apparently for a very long time, she hasn't been able to make her own decisions in life because of this conservatorship, which basically gives, I guess, someone else the power to make decisions for her. Things like her finances, how she could spend money. And just from reading some of the stuff, man, apparently she couldn't even have kids or something like that, and she still had to work. It was kind of crazy. Apparently the person in control is her own father too, which makes it crazy. So this is her own, of course, testimony and stuff. But like here, for example, just in terms of having to do stuff, I guess, that she didn't agree with according to this. Like it says here, in terms of like a work she did, 3 days later after I said no to Vegas, my therapist sat me down in a room and said he had a million phone calls about how I was not cooperating in rehearsals and I haven't been taking my medication. All this was false. He immediately, the next day, put me on lithium out of nowhere. He took me off my normal meds I've been on for 5 years, and lithium is a very, very strong and completely different medication compared to what I was used to. You can go mentally impaired if you take too much, if you stay on it longer than 5 months. It's kind of heartbreaking to read all this too. It says here, not only did my family not do a goddamn thing, my dad was all for it. Anything that happened to me had to be approved by my dad and my dad only. He acted like he didn't know that I was told I had to get tested over the Christmas holidays before they sent me away when my kids went home to Louisiana. And this comes the part where it really got me to think personally, because she's claiming here whenever I guess she didn't do something according to them, they would say, oh, you're like mentally insane, so to speak, and she had to be tested. And it says here, she said, I'm sorry, Britney, you have to listen to your doctors. They were planning to send you to a small home in Beverly Hills to do a small rehab program that we're going to make up for you. You're going to pay $60,000 a month for this. Imagine that, going through this life where you're being controlled and all that, if everything's true anyways, like what she's saying here, of course, and having all these doctors and so forth doing these cool tests on you and saying, okay, we think you're crazy, now you have to go off to this place where it'll cost you this much money. It almost makes you wonder if that's like the real motivation here. It's all about money and so forth to keep this person, I guess, locked and all that, so to speak. And man, it sounds like she really hates her dad and stuff for this. It says, I cried on the phone for an hour and he loved every minute of it. The control he had over someone as powerful as me, as he loved the control to hurt his own daughter. 100,000% he loved it. I packed my bags and went to that place. Because it is important to try to understand everything. Because I can imagine here, like for this story, people would say, oh, it's just a stupid celebrity complaining about this and that. Look at that person. Whereas in reality, if all this is true and stuff like that, she basically had like no control, like the stuff she was doing in terms of things, let's just say like her image and all that and the work that she's doing. I mean, it makes you think maybe people are too judgmental in terms of jumping the gun, thinking they know everything. You need to investigate everything, I guess it shows. And another reason why I think it's really fascinating and at times important to read other types of stories like these as well, because like here, I don't even think it's so much about conservatorship. If what she says is true, it's more about that thought where potentially it's a bunch of professionals and experts all kind of concluding, well, she's quote insane. She can't handle her own money and stuff like that. So yeah, she's gonna have to go to like this $60,000 place, pay for all these meds and so forth. So just imagine that in any other aspect in life, doesn't matter what the topic is, where a group of people, do they benefit from it financially to tell people, oh, it's dangerous, we're gonna tell you what's best for you, so to speak. I think that's the important thing to think about. look at how fast I can detect an aircraft in the air. Makes me wonder why they didn't use this if they were trying to track, I guess, that supposed drone. The heck, there's two of them. Alright, see you guys later.